Jackie and Philippe, take it away.
So good morning, everybody. I'm Philippe, and this is my wife, Jackie.
Hello.
And we are currently inside Pirouette. If you have not been to our cafe and a wine shop, we're on the corner of Quincy and Fairfax Boulevard, where the old
Carpool.
carpool used to be. For those of you who have lived in Arlington for a long time, carpool used to be on this site. A few years ago, it was demolished and a big apartment building was built, and we are at the ground floor of that building. Jackie and I live 2 blocks away, so we are in the neighborhood. We really wanted to build a neighborhood place, and we thought that we needed to be in our neighborhood to build a truly neighborhood place. Jackie and I, our background is very different than what we're doing today. But we've talked about running a small restaurant or wine shop or something around hospitality and wine and food for many, many years. Um, but sort of life did not really make that possible for many years. And it's only during the pandemic that we said, if we're going to do it, instead of just talking about it, we should just do it now. And so once the pandemic looked like it was going to have an end, and it was really when the vaccine came online, we decided to really explore the possibility. And we uh, um, we found this spot. We wanted a spot with a patio. We have a really nice, beautiful patio on that corner. We wanted also a lot of light, natural light, and we have windows on two sides of our space. And we wanted to have enough space to have a restaurant and a retail wine shop. So Pirouette is set up in such a way that there's a section that's a retail wine shop where you can just come in and buy wine for to bring home, and a restaurant side. So we have a full kitchen. We serve lunch and dinner, and one of the things that we promote is for our guests to come to the restaurant side. Uh, the the wine list is actually the wine shop. So our guests can get up, walk around the shelves, look at bottles, touch bottles, look at labels, talk to us about what they like, what they don't like. It's a very different experience looking at a wine list compared to looking at a book or a list, a paper list. Our guests often take that up and really spend time in the shop, choosing their bottle for their dinner, and that's a lot of fun. It creates a discussion, an organic discussion about what they like, what they don't like, what they're looking for in terms of wine. That is really, I think, very positive, both for us and our staff, and I think for the guests. Um, our space, if I may, I'm going to show you a little bit of the space. You can see on the camera our space. On this side is a retail wine shop. You can see that. And then you can see the big windows. The space then has this, I don't know if you can see it. We have this big table that separates the retail shop from the restaurant. And on this side is the restaurant. We have a banquet area. Let me show you. That's the banquet area where people sit at tables, and then we have booths on this side. Let's see. Here we go. I'm trying to angle this thing so that you can see. And as I said, in the middle is this tasting table. It's a long concrete table that seats 16 people, and we have a sculpture hanging over it. It serves as a visual separation between the retail and the restaurant without being an actual separation. It's more a conceptual sort of separation. Um, so that's kind of the overview of Pirouette. Very brief overview of how we got here. Needless to say, this was difficult on many fronts: planning, the financing of it, the permitting, the building, and then the staffing. That has been quite a challenge. We have encountered many challenges that we had to overcome that we didn't anticipate. And but here we are, 1 year into our project. We celebrated last Saturday, sorry, September 16, 1 year of operation at Pirouette. And I think that's probably all. If Jackie, do you want to add anything?
No, I mean, I think that's pretty much an overview. Part of why, part of what Philippe was referring to when he said there were a few years where it didn't quite work out was that we also um, uh, had a son 13 years ago, and I do have a background in restaurants, both in working in the front and back, and also as a vendor and supplying for restaurants. And just in at least the model that I was familiar with, restaurant hours and setup and pay don't work at all to support a family. Every chef that I ever worked for had a had a typically wife, since the typically executive chefs are male, um, who brought all the money and took care of the family, and it just wasn't. That was not going to be acceptable to just like kind of set aside our kid and not. It just doesn't work. There was no point in that. So that was also a driver for why we wanted something in our neighborhood, was so that there could be. Now our son is 13 years old. There could be the ability to easily go between home and work for us, for him, and that has that was always a good idea and has remained a good idea and has even shown itself to be a good idea in more ways than we anticipated. There have been a few things that went wrong, deliveries that came unexpected, emergencies with the building, and we were right here. I'm literally not counting the elevator ride because sometimes that stops a lot, but from the front door of our condo building to the front door of Pirouette is a 4-minute walk. So that I can't imagine having to add a traditional commute into already long hours and already a very demanding business. So that being literally in the exact same neighborhood where we live has been incredible. On top of that, one of the things that was a really big surprise to us was that not only are we neighborhood in the truest sense of the word, as a lot of places can look like a neighborhood place, but the owners and operators and everybody lives somewhere far further away. So it's just basically decorated to be homey. We truly are a neighborhood place, but we're so incredibly local that I've joked when we first opened, people would come into the front door and then point to where their balcony is or their window, which building. And I joked, I said, we literally have twice the commute as 2 blocks away from more than half of our guests. And not even counting the ones that live right upstairs and we let come through the back door. Oh, in case if the weather's bad, they don't have to go all the way outside and come all the way back inside. So so that so that's been fun to see. There was, for no real reason, I have been surprised to hear once we opened, for which we've now been open a year and a week. So many people have said to us, "Oh man, Arlington needs this. Oh man, Arlington needs this. Oh man, Arlington needs this." And it just for some reason surprised me. I didn't think we had a crazy idea, but for some reason, I always thought it was just such a personal thing that we'd always hoped somebody else would open and never ever did. I remember the deep disappointment when Mattress Discounters went into the old Pizza Hut place. And it was like, well, we bought 2 mattresses there and we never need to go back again because those don't need to be replenished very often. Um, so it just was like, oh, well, another boring store. we finally opened it, and it turns out we're not the only people who thought that it'd be nice to have a place that's not jam-packed with sports TVs, or places where everybody can get together and do a bunch of shots and get sick. We're just wine and beer. Um, it's it's just a different kind of environment. And the funny thing is that a lot of people would say, when they take after their first visit, they'd tell us, wow, the food is incredible. You didn't have to do that. And the whole idea there was that all of the good food is across the river in DC, and all the really crappy food is here in Arlington because Arlington people eat it. And it's one of those, like, well, no, a lot of my friends jump the river and go into DC to go get serious food. And it turns out that people in Arlington are quite willing to actually stay in their neighborhood and stay in their town and eat good food. And just because a restaurant is able to be successful with a bit of mediocrity doesn't mean that that's what everybody wants. So anyway, so all of that is to get into our idea has been special to a lot more people than just Philippe and I. And that is really a kind of affirmation that I hadn't realized would be so important to mitigate. Again, it's a very, very demanding business that we decided to go into.
All right, well, we've got some questions and comments piling up. The first one I was going to ask, but Liz beat me to it. She said, I love the glass art outside your restaurant. Can you talk about how that came to be? What went into deciding to do that? Did you pay for it, or is that public art that county paid for?
It is a public art, and it is part.
It's not. It's actually commissioned by
I'm sorry.
Jefferson
That's
Park.
right. It was commissioned by the company that built the building, and so it is. It is public art in the sense of it's out here. So we did not. It was here. It was commissioned when we signed our lease. So we didn't design it, but we certainly love it, and it reflects well on our aesthetic inside the restaurant. So it's very consistent.
Jackie talked a little bit about her background in restaurants and food services. Philippe, what did you do before you opened Pirouette?
Yeah, my background is mathematics. I started my career as a professor of mathematics at George Mason University many years ago, and stayed there for something like 12 or 13 years, jumped into the private sector, and then started a small technology consulting firm in 2008, and I ran that until I closed it down, in fact, June 30th of this year. So we have transitioned fully now to a 100% Pirouette. But yeah, technology and mathematics is my background.
All right. Next question is, you're a senior-focused organization. Are there any special senior discounts that you offer?
No. We are already, if you were to take a look at, because of the nature of our business model, Philippe and I went round and round about, since we offer a wine shop that's distinct from the restaurant, however, the wine shop itself acts as our by the bottle list. What that has done, we went over many different ways of exploring the restaurant markup that is traditionally applied to wines by the bottle. We went through a lot of different models about that, which also how to do it, what the markup would be, and then whether we agreed with it philosophically. And ultimately, what we decided to do is not do a corkage fee restaurant markup of any sort. So our bottles are largely tied to a reasonable retail price, which means if you were to take, and we've had people point this out to us, we've had people tell us you should be charging more. If you were to take a look around our shop at what those bottles cost, and then look around restaurants at what those same exact bottles cost, you could find an enormous difference. So we don't need to offer additional discounts. We're a very reasonable shop and restaurant.
Got just a comment here that this reminds them of the days when people had family businesses and lived upstairs. So you're kind of bringing that back around.
Yeah, it's a very as you can hear from my accent, I was born in France, and it's a very traditional model, right? The family restaurant where the family lives upstairs, and mom and dad and the kids all work in the restaurant, and yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
If I can go back to, it was kind of a summarized question about the senior discount. The beginning of that question is about A and B not typically featuring for-profit businesses. One thing that we've learned over the last year as we, I think within 2 weeks of us opening, where we'd been writing checks for construction, writing checks with a delay in order to, we actually paid our whole team for a week of not working because they had left their jobs to get started, but we couldn't get them in while we were waiting for permits. And we wanted to honor their commitment to us. Before we even were really bringing much in revenue, we were starting to get hit with, now that we're in a new place and we look cool, we have great design, all kinds of organizations were hitting us up for donations. Free this, free that, percentage of this, percentage of that. And so one of the things that I just want to put out there, because I don't think a lot of people consider it, is that for-profit businesses provide something incredibly important. We're not all evil behemoths like Amazon and big tech and all of that and all those problems. We provide income for people to be able to do the big things like rent an apartment, pay for food at home, have reliable transportation. And for-profit businesses, I think, often get strung into a category of not being good and taking and being capitalist and awful, and nonprofits are the only place where good things can happen. And I think that that's something that really needs to be challenged in people's thinking. For profit, we provide healthcare and jobs, stable jobs for quite a number of people.
So you talked about delays due to permitting. What were some of the biggest challenges to opening your cafe and wine bar? And what were the biggest surprises to you? Things you hadn't expected would be a challenge?
I would say we had sort of construction delays that we did not anticipate. A very it sounds silly, but it's actually true. Because we were the first tenants in the space, there were no plumbing in our space, so we had to drill through concrete to connect pipes to the main building plumbing. It turns out that when they built this building, all the cables for Comcast and all the fire alarm and security cables were put into the concrete, and nobody had a map of where that was. So the first hole we drilled, great. Second hole, great. Third hole, we cut a security and a fire alarm cable. And needless to say, this was not a fun time. So when we realized what was going on and we could not get an accurate positioning of these cables, and these cables, because they're so small compared to the rebars that are in the concrete, we just could not see them in radar images. So we basically wasted a number of weeks testing. We start to drill, wait, we had a sort of a sense that the drill machine would have a different noise when it hit a conduit, the plastic conduit, before we cut the plastic. So, oh, we can't drill here, let's drill there. So we wasted, I would say, a month of touch and go drilling. So that was a very big surprise. The other one that we knew in the abstract would be an issue, because everybody talked about logistics delays, about delivery of things. and cost of things right after the pandemic. But the kitchen equipment and the furniture was really stressful to get it in on site at a cost that we had agreed to. I mean, for example, when we first started bidding for the walk-in fridge in the kitchen, so it's a big fridge, you walk into. There was one company that told us that they could not guarantee a price, and it would vary as much as 50%. And they could not guarantee a delivery date, and it could vary as much as 3 months. And you can't plan that way. It was so that even though we knew in the abstract that was a possibility, the reality of it was really, really difficult to manage. So those were the kind of challenges. The county, as you probably know, is not an easy county regarding permits. It can be very picky and demanding. We had a few delays due to our fire alarm system connection with the building system, and that took us a while to resolve. And in terms of the other surprise for us and difficulty for us has been staff. Again, we knew, we had heard from friends and other restaurants, and that staff would be an issue. We did not realize the extent of the issue. Just to give you a sense of the scale of this, we have currently 22 people on payroll. The last person we hired was employee number 72. That's how much turnover we have seen in 1 year. So we basically hired 72 people to get 22 on payroll over 1 year. It's an enormous amount of effort, wasted training, wasted time. I mean, it's just very difficult. So the staff issue it continues to be very, very difficult to manage. And even though we provide really good hourly pay, we share tips with everybody, front and back of the house. We provide health insurance for those who work more than 30 hours. Even with that, it is very difficult to attract and keep really good workers. So that's a real issue.
Okay, our next question, with so many restaurants in Arlington, is it difficult to compete with them in terms of attracting customers?
I think the challenge, I think actually there's a shared challenge that a lot of restaurateurs in Arlington have, which is the lunch crowd, because people just aren't returning to the offices. So and people at home, it's just, the lunch crowd is just, it's hard for everybody. I think we're distinct enough, quite honestly. I would imagine that the challenge, when it comes to football season, everybody's down the block at Bronson Beer Hall because that's just the kind of location for it. Our biggest challenge really is actually getting people to think of us as a wine shop instead of heading to Total Wine. We still, for some reason, I've never understood it, but we still have people who walk all the way in, look around, there's tables everywhere, and they say, "What are you? I don't know what you are. Do you serve food?" And sometimes I'm like, well, I'm not running poker games. I mean, there's a ton of tables here. What do you think I'm doing? I mean, there's days where we're just so busy. I don't have as much patience for all of those questions, or like what I call the menu kickers. Every time somebody comes, except for in 1 year, one exception to this, what has become a universal weird rule, anybody who comes and says they want to look at our menu never, ever returns. And they always say they will. And then I print them all the time, and they walk off with them. And then I get in, and I'm like, come on, don't do that. Wait, behave at a restaurant properly. Don't ask us our background. Don't ask us how long, I've never gone to the kind of questions we get. I've never, ever thought to ask a restaurant, like, what did you do before you opened? What did you, I just am like, do you have a table for however many people I have with me? And that's kind of it. You know what I mean? One time I did ask a restaurant if they had air conditioning because it was a huge heat wave. It was over 100 degrees in New York City, and it was in Little Italy. And they have around that area, it's like South Beach, Miami. There's just out there standing outside, pasta fagioli, blah, 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 all the sales, whatever deal it is. And I just said, do you have AC? He said, yes. And I said, show me a table. I'm coming right in. That's it. So, but so that sometimes has been a surprise of like, and also people being extremely like, people are very friendly. What surprised me was when the Arlington Magazine interview came out, profile, which was very positive, and we got a lot of business from it. It became slightly uncomfortable. A lot of people, I looked at that as a whole interview about our restaurant and wine shop, about Pirouette. And I had a number of guests come and start to tell me facts about my own personal life that started to feel really uncomfortable. They just sit there and say, I know that you live 2 blocks away. I know that you have your sons working. I know that that's your husband. And it was just like, back off. I don't even know your name. And that was really, really weird of people wanting to tell me about my own life. And again, it's like I never would go to a restaurant and say these kind of things. So people are strange. You guys might know that by now.
Now, do you, you know, the question was about competing with other restaurants in the area. Do you collaborate with other people, other restaurateurs, you know, share
No.
practices, talk about what's going on in the industry?
No.
I've talked with, I mean, in a small way, very informal, one of the owners of Colada Shop that is expanding to, I think, their 6th or 7th location in Clarendon. She and her husband, actually the 2 owners live in Arlington, but one of them, Daniela, she and her husband, Andrew, live here in Arlington, and they come pretty often with their young son. We've talked briefly. They have a very different business plan. They opened always with the idea of expansion. That's not the case for Philippe and I. So we've talked with, I've definitely enjoyed talking with her. We both have about, you know, the different challenges. It's a shared challenge of staffing. She said they continually hire. And with so many shops, they have an even bigger need because they need to have a deeper tier of management in order to do it. They can't be owner operators like us with so many locations. So there's that, but otherwise, no. We're just doing our own. I've definitely talked with other staff. So because of my background in restaurants and our chef, I got to know him through being a vendor. Friends of ours are in the industry and shared friends, and so they'll come by sometimes. And so we have a lot of friends who are in the industry in some way or another, and so there's a lot of sort of that, you know, like end of day talking, kind of how you get together with a friend and talk about how difficult the business is right now, or that was a tough week, or whatever it might be. So there's that. Not we don't do anything where it's like a formal meeting of getting together and doing industry talk or anything like that. It's more just like sharing war stories.
Okay. The next question was, do you import your wines as well as sell American wines? You know, what's the mix of domestic versus imported and Virginia specific wines? You know, how does that all work out?
So about half of our portfolio is French. The other half is the rest of the world, including domestic. We cannot import our wines. We have to work through distributors. In Virginia, there's a 3-tier system: the producer, the importer, distributor, and the retail/restaurant. And you cannot cross these lines. So we work with distributors and importers who bring these wines into Virginia, and we buy them from the distributor and importer. Same with the domestic wines. It has to go through a distributor. I can't buy wine from California directly and sell it to you. That's illegal. So we have wines, we have domestic wines, we have wines from Italy, Spain, Germany, Portugal. As I said, About 50% is French. The other 50% is the rest of the world.
Okay, I've got a comment here. She loves the fact that you have live entertainment and wine tastings. So I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about what kind of
Sure.
entertainment you guys have.
Sure. So we have started this fall a Wednesday evening live music. Every Wednesday, 6 to 8 p.m., we have a musician, a live musician in our space. If the weather is nice, the musician is outside on the patio. Otherwise, he or she is inside. We have free tasting on Saturdays and Sundays, 1 to 4. Every weekend, we taste 4 wines, 2 whites, 2 reds. Same wines on Saturday and Sunday, different wines every weekend. And it's first come, first serve. We just pour, about a little less than an ounce of wine, just enough to taste, 1 or 2 sips, discuss the wines, have it. So for our guests, it's a chance to discover wines that you would never sort of even pick up, and learn about the context of these wines, and why they are on our shelves. So far, that's as much as we have done. We also have done, and we're planning for this fall and winter special dinners, 5-course dinners, where we pair food and wine, and we do a sort of a extensive discussion about the food and the wine, 5 courses. We have done also private tastings for groups who are interested in sort of a special tasting program. So we've done that also.
Okay. Who was the architect that designed your space?
3877. It's a firm in Georgetown.
Yeah, Studios 3877, and they focus solely on hospitality.
Okay, we've got a comment here. I didn't realize until my kids worked in restaurants that they didn't even make the normal minimum wage, so they couldn't depend on their paycheck for a consistent income.
So this is addressing the tip credit. We don't take it. The tip credit, there's a lot that people don't understand. I'm guessing regular guests in restaurants do not know the difference between a service charge and a gratuity. They are legally different terms. A gratuity must go to tipped employees. Service charges can be kept by the restaurant for any purpose. So that's very good to know. If you see the 2 lines, they are not the same thing. They don't necessarily, a service charge may never go to an employee. It could be fully operational cost. The tip credit is when a restaurateur is allowed to pay below minimum wage their tipped employees, because so long as the tips that those employees collect meet the minimum wage requirement. So I believe in DC you can go as low as $2.13 or $2.33 per hour, so long as, I believe DC's minimum wage is now $15. So long as whatever those tipped employees collect adds up to $15 per hour, or whatever is the minimum wage. In Virginia, the minimum wage is 7 something, I believe, still, and it's going to go up. Or anyway, we pay above that for 2 reasons. Our salary. So it's a given that if there's a slow shift, the server will get that base hourly wage. It is above minimum wage, as I said. Then, because we don't take the tip credit, we are then able to enforce a whole house tip pool. And that was very, very important to me, having worked in the back of house. I worked at 2941 in the garde-manger position. And I remember servers kept their tips. And because it's a very expensive restaurant, just even a 20% tip adds up to a hell of a lot of money that the servers get to keep and take home. Very often servers are encouraged to tip out the bar, tip out your food runners and bussers, but it's kind of up to them. And once cash is in somebody's hand, it's very hard for them to give it up. So for us, it kind of was maddening, because I know in all of these restaurants, the back of when a server gets slammed, when is really busy in the front, so is the back, so is the line. I know that there isn't a single server that washes their dishes and makes all of the food. There is a team that goes into the entire experience, but the server is the one that faces the guest. So we've calculated ours out. So everyone except management participates in the tip share. The servers do get the highest percentage of it because of because they are the ones interfacing with the guest. But it goes all the way to our prep cooks, dishwashers, food runners, bussers, and line cooks. So everybody else who's part of it, the whole house is part of a guest experience. So that hopefully will help you understand the overview to this person. Yes, it might not be reliable, but depending on which place your children decided to work at, they could walk out with a lot of money. You're not going to walk out with a lot of money if an average check is $15. So like diners and things like that, maybe 20, 25. But if you're able to land a job in a fine, high end, high ticket, tasting table, each person spends $500, those servers might walk out with a hell of a lot of money. So that's just kind of hopefully clarifies the different ways that restaurants pay their staff. The other thing I want to add to that is there still is the mentality that you only tip on good service. I don't think a lot of people this is not the case at Pirouette, but again, the tip really truly is like a gratuity and it's shared with everybody. It's not to make up for a lost or below minimum wage hourly pay. But for a lot of tipped workers, it is. And so if you go into the restaurant with the idea that you are tipping as a thank you for good service, that's not necessarily true. What you are doing, a lot of restaurants have put the responsibility of the front of house payroll entirely on the guest. So they don't actually have it factored into their operating costs, is that staff labor. It is up to the guest, and the guest is paying those hourly wages through the tip. It's not just a thank you for giving good service. It is to make sure that person's not making $2.13 per hour.
And we've got a comment on that. They said, yeah, sometimes people are just cheap and find a reason not to tip well.
Yeah, and there's always also like I try to be generous too, having operated a business. I know what it's like to have like really slow. Well, the first time we went out, we ended up encountering extremely slow service. It took a long time, but we also were able to see, having operated a business, that there were only 2 people working the whole floor, and it just was hard on them. And so we were generous. We still tipped. We understood it was going to take a long time. It wasn't quite a satisfying meal out, but we got it. Bad days happen.
So can you talk about the name of your restaurant? How did you choose that, and does it have a special significance?
Yeah, so Pirouette, we wanted a French name, and we went through multiple iteration. One of them turned out to be trademarked, and we just didn't want to deal with that. So we landed on Pirouette for 2 reasons. One, we thought the word captured our concept. I mean, pirouette in dance is movement. There's elegance. There is really a beautiful sort of beautiful movement, and we thought an elegant movement. We thought that captured our concept of elegance, of dynamic environment, and happy environment. So that was one thing, and we changed our lives around. We invested everything we have into this, and changed our lives around to start Pirouette. So we did do a pirouette in our own lives, and so that fit that also. So that's how we ended up going with that word.
Now, we keep reading about how COVID cases are starting to increase again. Do you expect that to impact your business? Are customers coming in wearing masks? Will there be a point where you and your staff start wearing masks again?
we haven't seen an increase in masks. And that's one of the reasons we really wanted a space with a patio. So I think we don't anticipate that this would impact us that much.
To be honest, I think now that vaccines and boosters have been out there, it's kind of just hard overall to see us with COVID returning to the same situation that we all went through in 2020 and 2021. I think it would be very hard, even in states that were supportive of following CDC guidelines, to see that level of shutdown. Of course, for us, we'll follow anything that is required by CDC. We do, even now when we've had staff who have tested positive for COVID. There has been that. Quite honestly, actually, when I was getting my son was getting his sports physical, the nurse was saying that there's never been a single change in as far as her view of testing results. It's just a matter of the number of people coming in for tests. Everyone who comes in for a test shows up positive. So there's that. But yeah, we'll follow the guidelines. If anybody wanted to, we would, if it's required for people to work with masks, of course they will. If it's not, they're welcome to if they want. We have had some people come through with masks, but not that many, and like one out of a month, maybe.
Okay, you talked about staff turnover. What are the other major challenges to running a restaurant?
Oh. Let me count the ways.
I don't know. Becoming super profitable. There you go. We'll take ideas.
So I would say, especially coming from a different kind of business. So a technology consulting business was a completely different kind of business. I would say one of the things that I've really wrestled with is the uncertainty of revenue every day, right? So you take an example, yesterday, over the weekend, the weather forecasted beautiful weather. The models forecasted beautiful weather for yesterday. But it turned out that it rained. So we could not open a patio. A day that could have been really good for us. When the patio is open, when the weather is nice, people come to the patio. It's really a wonderful patio, and it increases traffic. There's no question. So yesterday it rained, and my guess is our revenue was cut in half. It's only a guess, of course. So the uncertainty about today's revenue is very difficult to work with, especially since we're a new restaurant and we don't have historical data, right? We don't have 5 years of, well, this is what happens, or we'll pick up on this day, or there's really no pattern that we can grasp at this point because we don't have enough history. So that is a very difficult, at least for us, and it may sound naive for other restaurateurs, but that's not something that I was quite fully prepared to deal with, and we're just managing as well as we can. But that's a big challenge, this uncertainty.
You said you just celebrated your first anniversary. Do you have plans moving forward to make any changes in how you operate?
I think actually the phrasing of that question is probably one of the biggest things, hitting on what Philippe was saying of like the surprises of not knowing what to expect. The plans going forward is literally the thing. We thought we would open last year in June, and we opened September 16th. And for all areas of the hospitality industry, including wine distributors and all of that, suppliers, everybody, the last quarter of the year is the biggest one. And we found ourselves just almost in a, not completely, but largely in a reactive mode. So it was one of those, like, just kind of operating a little bit stunned, overwhelmed, busy, and going forward, but sort of like, oh man, the holidays are upon us. What do we do? I don't know. Just run a regular restaurant, you know. So we've gotten, you know, a few months ago, we sat down with our chef, the three of us, Philippe, Adam, and I, and just started to kind of look ahead at what are things that we can actually plan for, as far as either little tweaks to the business, or a special night, or a special something or other, um, and kind of plan for that. And then again, it's a lot of learning. You know, some things that we think might be a really good idea end up not being all that popular, and so we just can it. And so I don't know if that answers the question. We don't have any major changes. It just what we've done that's been pretty good, from like the live music that is, it started a couple weeks ago, but really the Wednesday series starts tonight. That launching a happy hour menu between lunch and dinner. It kind of crosses over an extra hour into dinner, but from 3 to 6, that involves small plates that are not on any other menu. Wines that are 2 wines that are our choice, that are at a discounted price, if you will. Uh, we found ways, without, I feel like, over programming ourselves, we found ways for even our regulars to enjoy and experience Pirouette in a different way. So it's not just here's the lunch menu and here's the dinner menu. There's something different to do when they come, or different to try. And while it's still being a regular spot, that's not changing drastically. We definitely don't want to. I think it's very hard, and a lot of restaurants have been challenged to do like one massive wholesale big change. We want to do small incremental ones that we can be thoughtful about and that we feel ready for.
Got a question here. Something that we've seen over and over again is a restaurant's lease expires and the landlord jacks the rent way up, and they can't afford to stay there anymore. So they either close or move somewhere else. Is that a concern for you guys? How's your relationship?
That's like 9 years from now. I hope we're still alive.
But we also negotiated 2 5-year options beyond that, and we have already negotiated those rents. So we have now 19 years ahead of us. So I think we're good.
Okay.
I think, you know, going back to, some people were saying, you know, like kind of like some comments were about reminiscing for old times. One thing that is just so rare to find these days are new restaurants. You just don't see, like Old Ebbitt Grill, I think, is almost 50 years old. Places like that, established in the, 1960 something. These days, it kind of blew my mind when even our own architects, they had designed Momofuku DC, and in our early conversations, I think it was about the cost of the HVAC system, which was not fun. I'll say that number was pretty big. That came up, and I brought up, I said, well, they closed so soon after opening. And the head of the firm said, well, he was on the call, and he said, well, kind of recalculated it and said, well, it was 4 years. That's a good run. And I just remember thinking, like, how can that possibly be a good run? I feel like when we cross our 4th year anniversary, we might finally feel like we know what we're doing, but we still have a lot to settle. So it seems like the current climate is open, close, or open, franchise, or open and turn into a chain, and not just like sit in one location and make it good for a long time. But that's the kind of the model we want to go after.
Okay. Next question, which might be kind of a dangerous one. Are there ever times when you'd like to say something to a customer, but you can't because it wouldn't be good for your business? And if that's the case, would you care to share a few examples?
Yes and no.
Oh man,
No,
we won't go into any, but for sure.
Yes.
We have had a couple rare times where we had to just ask somebody to leave, but that was when they were behaving very appropriately with our own staff. And there've been a couple times where our staff has told us later, after the person's gone, what was said or done. They were touched, just really gross behavior. But otherwise, yeah, there's times where we're basically like run to the back, and I'll tell Adam, and then we'll like both stand in what we call the gossip corner of the kitchen and say it back there. But mostly, I do want to say we mostly have really wonderful people coming
Yes.
through, and I can say that I've written it in some of our emails. Our regulars are largely, for the most part, people we never even knew before we opened Pirouette. And just because regular life doesn't mean you get to meet the person riding their bike down the street or standing at the crosswalk with you. You just kind of stick to yourself. They're really wonderful, and we see them very often, and it really is a great bright spot. And they even mean a lot to our own staff. So it's not just regulars for me and Philippe that as owners we enjoy them, but our own servers will be like, oh, hey, hi, how are you? And it's really wonderful to see that. Really, really wonderful.
So are most of your customers locals, from the immediate area, walking distance, or are people starting to come in from further out?
So we have, I would say like most people live within like a 3-block radius. And then what they'll do, which is really funny, is they'll bring their friends from like DC. And then I always joke, I'm like, oh, you came out to the country. But yeah, they're very much here. A lot of people who come here often, and this is across the ages. We have a lot of people, we check a lot of IDs, and it turns out most people are like 23 to 25, a lot of them, and they just want to come to a restaurant and hang out and share a bottle of wine. But it's been fun to see. The people will be very proud to tell us, like, I brought another friend, and it's really sweet. So.
Okay, well, I've got a question here. This is somebody that has hearing problems, and so the biggest problem for them is finding restaurants with low noise levels. Do you have a quiet corner where somebody like that can sit?
We do. We have a couple spaces that are quieter. I would say Friday and Saturday tends to be very busy, and there's really, busy crowd. It just gets noisy. There's no question. I won't lie. Tuesday and Wednesday is much more quiet, and there would not be an issue we would have a couple corners a couple tables that would work very well. And we have a few guests who have in their notes in their reservation. I would prefer a quiet table because of my hearing aid, or whatever. And we do have that.
Yeah.
But I would recommend dinner earlier in the week where it's significantly less busy, and the noise level is just overall down.
Or even
Or lunch.
earlier in the evening. Yeah, lunch, of course. Earlier in the evening, or while the weather is beautiful. We are on Resi. Reserving a table on the patio is quieter than inside. Inside, we do have a lot of concrete, so there's a lot of bouncing noise. Out on the patio, even though we're at an intersection, it's actually a completely different sound. It's fun to work out there. It's really beautiful to sit out there. And the sound is softer. It has places to travel to and not bounce back at you. So we do recommend that. There's options.
Okay. And you said there's entertainment tonight?
Yes, from 6 to 8 p.m. Jack Jarries is a guitarist. He'll be playing tonight.
Right. That was my question, was who's on the bill?
And it's on. You can find it on our website. We have up at the top in the navigation pane, events, music, and more. That has a calendar of things coming up, and we'll just continue to populate both live music and anything else, whether it's a wine dinner or any kind of special event.
I popped the website address into the chat. I can do it again.
Thank you.
We thank you for your time, but we have to jump off for another appointment.
And
Thank
we're
you for
finished
having
as well. So it's almost 11 o'clock. And so it's a good time, first of all, to thank both of you, Philippe and Jackie. You've certainly given a great overview of your restaurant and your growing pains. And hopefully there'll be many of us who are on the show here or on the listening to you to join you at your restaurant. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay.